Good day. I appreciate that many people in the United States still suffering from the pandemic restrictions, still living through various lockdowns, and still facing a great deal of economic hardship, may not be aware of the fact, but in the last weeks of 2020 and in the first weeks of 2021, the US economy was experiencing surging growth. All the indications are, moreover, that this growth might actually be accelerating. By some measures, the US economy may be growing faster at this time than it has done at any other period since the Second World War. I say that obviously we need to be cautious. We haven't really got all the statistics out yet. It's not easy to process these statistics, and it may be that they will be modified in the future. But that there is a very rapid growth in the underlying economy is, it seems to me, indisputable. And we should not be surprised that this is the case. The recession that took place in 2020, severe though it was an artificially induced one. It was, in fact, the product of the various lockdowns and restrictions that were put in place by the federal and state governments in response to the pandemic crisis that affected the United States and the rest of the world in 2020. As the pandemic eases and as the restrictions are lifted, even though they're being lifted so far in a very piecemeal fashion, it was inevitable that growth would come roaring back. Moreover, that is the pattern in all the other big advanced economies around the world, which are also, like the United States, in a pandemic easing cycle. It was true, for example, of China last year, and it has been true of Russia in the first weeks and months of 2021. So we should not be surprised that the economy is surging, but the fact that the economy is surging to the extent that it is does beg some very interesting questions about the purpose of Joe Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus plan. This is, to be very clear, the biggest stimulus plan that the United States has ever unveiled in its peacetime history. It is on an unprecedented scale. It comes after repeated stimulus, bouts of stimulus, which took place over 2020, as both Congress and the Federal Reserve Board pumped vast amounts of funding into the US economy in order to keep businesses functioning, or at least alive, during the restrictions, the pandemic restrictions and lockdowns. One would have expected, and it would be the normal thing to expect, that as those restrictions start to be lifted and as the economy comes back to life, the moment would come for stimulus to be reined in rather than to be reinforced in this titanic way. And yet, the Democrats and the Biden administration remain extraordinarily insistent on pressing ahead with this vast stimulus package, despite the fact that there are growing concerns about it, not just from academic economists who worry that it might lead to inflation, but also within the financial markets with concerns that have already expressed themselves in the form of a large-scale sale of Treasury bonds, which took place last week. Why is the Biden administration pressing ahead with its unprecedented and vast stimulus at precisely the moment when logically it should be scaling back. I'm going to suggest that there are two reasons for this, and that neither of them have very much to do with economics. All of them are related instead to the internal politics of the Democratic Party. Firstly, the Democratic Party has increasingly shown itself to be an uneasy coalition of different groups. The left of the party has never been stronger since the Second World War than it is now. There is a large group of radical left-wing Democratic Congress people, especially in the House of Representatives, some of whom are quite open in defining themselves as socialists. And these people obviously want to see spending happen to fulfill the various ambitious, sometimes over-ambitious projects that some of them have in mind. There's also the fact that many of them have bought into this new economic theory of a modern monetary theory, which they see as justifying this vast surge in spending. The centrist mainstream of the Democratic Party, people like Obama and Clinton and Biden himself, are of course fully aware of this. They're fully aware of the fact that the Democratic Party is now, perhaps more than it has ever been, an uneasy and fractious coalition. And they are worried that unless they go ahead with all this spending, they will find themselves in a situation where the party in Congress becomes increasingly difficult to manage, and where Joe Biden and the administration starts to come in for increasing criticism from the party's left. Already, in fact, there have been some criticisms from some party activists following the airstrike in Syria, and what some people on the Democratic Party's left see as delays in implementing some of the Biden administration's economic and social programs. Just to give one example, Jamal Green, a Democratic Party activist, very much on the left, has made this comment in response to the airstrikes. We didn't flip Georgia blue for Biden to airstrike Syria. We flipped Georgia blue for our $2,000 stimulus checks and for the $15 minimum wage and for $50,000 of student loan debt to be cancelled. And of course, that person speaks for many others also. And I'm sure that this is something that the party, the Democratic Party, the DNC, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and all of the people who make up the leadership of the Democratic Party are fully conscious of, and it is one reason why they are pressing ahead with this huge stimulus plan. But I think that there is another reason, and I think it is an even deeper and more profound one. And this comes back to the concerns of Barack Obama, who, in my opinion, remains very much the power behind the throne, or if you like, the shadow shogun, who still dominates much of the opinion and discussion taking place within the Democratic Party. In my opinion, Obama has always regretted the fact that his stimulus at the time when he became president in 2009, in the immediate aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, was too small. He was widely criticised at the time from the left of the party, from people like Paul Krugman, the economist, for not having gone forward with a much bigger stimulus then than the one that he did. And I think he has always regretted the fact that he didn't go for that much bigger stimulus that he was urged to, but instead followed the advice of people like Larry Summers and went for a much smaller, more conservatively sized stimulus, which of course he negotiated with the congressional Republicans. I think also Obama not only regrets doing that, the fact that he did that, but I think he also feels that the fact that he went for a much smaller stimulus than the people on the left of the party urged him to do in 2009, I think he feels that that caused the US economy to grow much more slowly during the period when he was president. And I think that he feels that the result of that was depressed real wages, which were one of the reasons why working class America voted in 2016 for Donald Trump. So Obama doesn't want that to happen again. He's very concerned that either Donald Trump or someone like him might come back in 2024 if the economy isn't growing rapidly before then. And as a result, I suspect that in private, he is counseling the Biden administration and all the various important people in the Democratic Party to spend as much as they can in order to get the economy moving forward fast, so as to avert the risk either of a Trump return or of a return by the Republicans under the leadership of someone like Donald Trump. Well, will this all work? We shall see. First of all, I ought to say that I have always been very sceptical about the theories that the stimulus, if it had been bigger in 2009, would have made very much difference. It's always seemed to me that there was a misunderstanding, and there continues to be a misunderstanding about the nature of the financial crisis of 2008. I've always felt that people, at least within the policy-making world in Washington, have failed to grasp that 2008 was essentially a debt and solvency crisis, and that these attempts at massive spending to supposedly bolster demand were not really appropriate instruments to respond to it. I think many of these ideas, many of these so-called Keynesian ideas about massive stimulus spending, really relate back to the very different economic world of the 1930s, when during the Depression, the United States was basically experiencing what was at that time called an overproduction crisis. In other words, a situation where the US's manufacturing industries were producing more than the general population could consume, causing a resulting recession. I don't think there's anything like that today, comparable like that today, either in 2008 or indeed now. I think in 2008, the problem was that there was too much debt, and I think more financial stimulus would simply have ended up going into debt repayments. And I think today in 2021, we are again in a completely different situation where, as I've said, the economy is surging ahead, and that kind of stimulus that people are talking about is simply not needed. So I suspect that those people who worry that the result of all of this stimulus will be, yes, a short period of very fast economic growth, but with all sorts of problems resulting, with the economy becoming overheated and perhaps higher inflation. I suspect that those people are right. But we will see. What is indisputable is that the Democrats and the Biden administration are determined to get this stimulus. Susan Collins, the Republican senator who was so anti-Trump and who supported the impeachment case against him and voted for him, and who in Republican terms is very much a centrist and somebody who seems to be keen to work with the Biden administration and to cooperate with them, has been apparently dismayed by the extent to which she has found the Democrats unwilling to listen or negotiate or compromise over this vast stimulus plan. She has described a visit she made to the White House and a meeting she had with Biden, in which she spoke to Biden about the need to scale down this huge stimulus plan and to agree on something more affordable and more realistic. She spoke of a stimulus plan of perhaps $600 billion as opposed to the $1.9 trillion that Biden is looking for. She says that Biden himself listened apparently attentively, but the other Democratic Party officials and administration officials in the room, presumably the Oval Office, were listening to her and shaking their heads. And it seems that the Democrats are therefore in a completely uncompromising mood, and that they will press forward with this plan and no matter what until they get it. Well, we shall see how this all turns out. In economics, it's never absolutely possible to be completely sure. My guess is that we will see higher inflation, and my further guess is, very much as the bond vigilantes in the markets are worrying, that the result will be a rise in interest rates as the Federal Reserve Board, faced with the prospect of higher inflation, is left with no option but to slam on the brakes. If that does indeed happen, then I think we will see that this great project of powering the US economy ahead and lifting it forward, lifting wages forward so as to stop a Trump return in its tracks, is going to fail and fail dismally. On the contrary, if the Federal Reserve Board is forced to slam on the brakes, if we see cutbacks in spending, if we see a recession result, then of course there will be a major political price to pay, and we will see an even bigger swing back to the Republicans than we would have seen otherwise. And if Donald Trump is the Republican candidate in 2024, then of course we could certainly see him in that kind of situation return with a vengeance. Either way, this is a gamble, a huge gamble with the future, the economic future of the United States. No doubt the United States, with its huge latent strength, will come through. But frankly, it seems to me that we're in for a wild ride. Thank you for joining me in this program. I look forward to you joining me in future programs on this channel. Please also check us out on our other channels, the main channel, which we do together, Alex Christoforou and me, on the Duran. Also, please check out Alex's own channel. And then we've got another channel now in which we broadcast the various conversations we had with our viewers who in our live shows. You'll find links for all these channels under this video. Please also check us out on our other platforms: BitChute, Library, Odyssey, Rumble, and the rest. Please also support us through our various through PayPal, Subscribestar, Patreon, and via Bitcoin, and all the rest. And last but not least, look up our shop, see the wonderful merchandise you will find there, our amazing t-shirts, our sweatshirts, like the one I'm wearing today on this cold, wintry February day in London, and of course our famous magic mugs, our hats, our hoodies, and the rest. And I look forward to seeing you in my next program, and thank you for joining me for this one.